Hello and welcome to another episode of Jalan Jalan Cari Rumah. I am Ikhram, your host, a nobody, with Gunaprasath, my co-host, who is a somebody in the property market. He's very famous. He's got property publications. He speaks in property events, and he also hosts a very premier property awards event once a year. Hi, Guna.
Hi, Ikhram. Wow, he's such a gentleman. A very nice introduction.
Occasionally lah. Once in a while I taro you, once in a while I have to be nice to you, right?
Just like the suspenders and the hat, You had to wear it today, right?
I have to.
Hey, before we go any further, right, with any topic whatsoever, so when are we running?
That challenge. Someone posted on Facebook that 3 kilometers is just warming up for you. Do you want to do more? Or is 3 kilometers okay?
I think we'll do the 3 kilometers first. See if you can keep up with me. Then we shall see how we go with the longer distance. What say you?
Okay, so we'll do it in 2 weeks' time?
Perfect. Heard that, yeah? We've got a 3 km run in 2 weeks' time, and then we'll be discussing something about KLCC property or something like that.
Yes. So stay tuned for that because we're going to talk about something controversial about KLCC. Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. No holds barred.
No holds barred.
I can ask you anything as well, right? No holds barred.
It all depends. Your questions could get very, very, very personal. I know that very well.
That's the point of no holds barred, right?
Okay, whatsoever. Now, you asked me to come all the way to Anggun residence to make this recording.
Yep.
You promised me coffee. I don't see no coffee around.
I thought I promised you 2 German girls and they were waiting for you at the lobby when you arrived.
No, that's a big lie. And thank God I came prepared because I know Ikhram so well. Old Town White Coffee. This is one of the best coffees around. Now, you're going to make this for me or? I guess not, right? Okay, I'll make my own coffee after this. What are we talking about today, Ikhram?
Today we want to talk about something that's very interesting, which related to property investment, and that is about the topic of negative cash flow. Is investing in a property that gives you negative cash flow good or bad? To invest in one or not to invest in one? That's the question.
I don't see anything wrong with it. Totally. I don't see anything wrong with it. The connotation behind it, negative cash flow, may seem like something really bad. But I don't think so. Because if you think about it, an investment means you have to come up with money. It's an investment. You can't expect to get it for free, right? So let's take, for instance, scenario A and scenario B. Scenario A, there's this person who's purchased a home and he's living in that home. Right, so on a monthly basis, he's got to pay a mortgage of 4,000 ringgit. Let's say, right? And scenario B, this person bought a unit in the same condominium as person A,
Yep.
and this person is paying 4,000 mortgage to the bank every month, but he bought it for investment, and he is getting a return of 3,000 ringgit in rental. Right, plus, he's probably paying about 4,500, almost 5,000 to the bank and to other auxiliary payments and so on. So he's only coughing out 1,500 ringgit for his investment, whereas this person on scenario A is coughing out 4,000 or maybe 5,000 ringgit for his investment. So there is a negative cash flow on this side, on both sides actually. But for this person, the burden is much, much less.
But isn't the whole point of an investment to generate passive income? Meaning, if I were to put my money, let's say in stocks that gives me dividends, I'm generating income from that investment. Whereas in property, when there's negative cash flow, would it be wrong to say that it's a liability because I have to fork out money every month on this property, this investment, so to say?
You can look at it that way, Ikhram, but the thing is, property has never been invest today and make money tomorrow. It's never been that scenario. Property is a long-term investment. You've got to look at capital gain. Capital gain is the main attraction for property investment. You've got to wait for the capital appreciation and gain from that. The auxiliaries where you get a monthly income and so on is to help you with your mortgage. No doubt there. to help you with your payment. But the end game is the most important. That's why I've always advised people to invest smartly. Invest in areas where you know the capital appreciation is bigger compared to smaller capital appreciation. So when time comes, when you're ready to sell the unit, you'll make back money. You'll make back money much more than any bonds or stocks that you mentioned earlier.
I beg to differ on making more money than stocks or bonds, because historically the stock market has outperformed the property market. Just to differ. But I agree with you that negative cash flow doesn't necessarily mean that the property you're buying is a bad investment, but there has to be a cap, meaning you can't, let's say you bought a property and your monthly installment to the banks, your monthly repayments to the bank is 5,000 ringgit, okay? You are only getting an income of 3,000 ringgit. So your shortfall is 2,000 ringgit every month. In fact, it might be more if you add on things like maintenance and, taxes and all that. So your shortfall is 2,000 ringgit. The question is, can you afford that 2,000 ringgit shortfall? Now, for some people, yes, maybe you could. For some people, you can't. It may be a burden. And the moment it becomes a burden or a strain, example, let's say you're barely scraping through with this 2,000 and you were to lose your job, right? And it happens often. Like we just had the oil and gas, when oil prices dropped, a lot of people in the oil and gas industry lost their jobs. Now, you have a shortfall of 2,000 ringgit and you don't have the income to subsidize this, right? Then it becomes a huge problem. Meaning you've got this debt, which is your mortgage that needs to be paid, and you can't service it because you're short of 2,000 ringgit every month. Worse still, at the same time you lose your job, your tenancy expires. So then what do you do?
Aren't we a basket full of bad news today?
No, I'm just playing it out because I've seen it happen. Right? So there needs to be a cap, and which is why I always tell people, when you're going to invest in property, it's really hard, by the way, to generate positive income on your property. Yes, there are certain types of properties, but I'm estimating that in the market, around 5% of property investors are actually generating positive cash flow. The remaining 95% are either breaking even or making negative cash flow on the property. That doesn't mean this 95% of people have made bad investment choices. It could be good, but you have to be very careful with the quantum and whether you can afford it. So it's always a good idea to calculate out and know exactly how much you have to fork out in your negative cash flow, and then to decide whether this is something you can comfortably afford. If you can't afford it, then it's not a good option to be going in for a property, because I feel that it's very difficult to lose money in property investment, except when you get caught with your pants down, meaning when you have to sell it, when you're forced to sell the property, like in this instance, when you can't pay the mortgage anymore, then it becomes a desperate sale. Now, as long as you can hold on to a property indefinitely and sell it at a point where you are making a profit, you never really lose money on property.
Totally agreed. Never be caught with your pants down if Ikhram's around.
That's why I wear the suspenders, my friend. That's why I wear suspenders. My pants will never fall down with you around.
Thank God for that. But very true. Excellently said. Yeah. The tip here is very simple. Don't look at that amount just as an amount. As what do I mean by that? If your mortgage back to the bank is 4,000 ringgit and you have 2,000 ringgit and you're expecting 2,000 ringgit to come from rental, that's the wrong way of going about it. You have to be able to afford the full mortgage. If you're going to get a rental to come in to pay for part of that mortgage, that's a bonus. Right? So if you're going to purchase a property for investment and you do your calculation and your able to sustain a 4,000 ringgit mortgage to the bank every month. Now, you need to take into consideration 20% of that. 20% of 4,000 ringgit, which is another 800 ringgit, which will be your auxiliary payments, which is your monthly maintenance fee, your cukai pintu, all of this put together, right? So that will be your average calculation. So it's 4,000 ringgit, you need 4,800 ringgit. So can you afford that on a monthly basis? Not scrape through. Can you afford it? That's a big question mark here. Yep. And if you can afford a monthly mortgage of 4,800, which would equate roughly to a property purchase of about 1.2 million, right? If you can afford a 1.2 million property, I'd suggest buy a 1 million property. Go a little lower. If you can afford a 500,000 property, go for a 450,000 ringgit property. Always go one step lower and slowly. I would say 10%, at least 10%. Right? So that will give you a little bit more of a comfort zone, as compared to going in ngam and having trouble later, or going in thinking you can afford it and, like you said, losing your job later on. If it's not too much of a burden, you also have help out there, in the sense of you've got EPF, okay, which you can always go and speak to the EPF office. They're very nice, by the way. The EPF officers, they're very, very nice. Go and speak with them, and there is, if I'm not mistaken, there is the option of a monthly withdrawal for your installments, for your property installments, or you can pay your principal as well. Things like that. So you've got a backup there in case things go sour. And if you happen to not be able to get a job for 6 months to a year, something's wrong somewhere. Literally wrong somewhere, and you better do something fast. Because you are investing into a property, and investing into a property for most people, I'm not saying everyone out there, but for most people, it is your lifetime savings going down in a deposit, and you're taking a loan for the rest of your working career, rest of your working life. So you want to make the right choice.
I completely agree. And here's another dimension, if I might add, to this whole negative cash flow proposition, is this. When you're looking at your cash flow, right, people always overlook this. You see, when I buy, let's say we are looking at a property worth 750,000 ringgit. Guna buys it with cash, 750,000 cash, and he goes and rents it out, and he's getting 3,000 ringgit income. Okay, so his cash flow is positive 3,000. He's got no installments to the bank. I'm simplifying this, the taxes and all these other costs, but just let's only look at the mortgage just to simplify this. So he has got a positive cash flow of 3,000 ringgit. I, on the other hand, buy the exact same 750,000 ringgit property. I take a mortgage on it, 90% loan, right? And my installment to the bank is, let's say, 3,500 ringgit. Okay, I'm renting it out for 3,000 ringgit. My cash flow is negative 500 ringgit. Now, in Guna's scenario, he has put in 750,000 of his cash. He's paid for the house. In my scenario, I don't have that 750,000 in cash, so I'm borrowing from the bank. Okay, but I have to pay that principal of, I have to put in that 750,000. So this is cash that I have to put in. I have to buy the house. Just like in your case, you put 750,000 there, right? So what the additional cost for me is the interest that I have to pay to the bank. All right? So the correct way to be looking at both our investments is this. He's got his positive cash flow, that's fine. But for me, is my rental covering the interest payments?
Exactly.
So if the interest payments are covered, right, it means that the actual cost is actually covered. The balance, the principal repayment is what you have to pay anyway, even if you buy the property with cash.
Totally agreed. And for most who do not know this, your first 10 years to 15 years of your mortgage payment, is majority of it goes to your interest. Majority of it goes to your interest. A small portion goes to your principal. So whenever you've got extra cash in hand, this is a tip as well, you've got extra cash in hand, or you can withdraw from your EPF, take your money and dump it into the principal account, the principal of your mortgage. Go to the bank and tell them, I want to put this into my principal, not into my interest. So that what will happen here is your principal will become lower. And when your principal drops, your interest drops as well. So your monthly installment becomes less. That's one way of going about it. And there's I don't know whether I should share this or not, but there was a company that approached me a long time ago. I'm not going to mention names, but I found it very interesting. And I sat down and had a long chat with them. It was so difficult for me to understand, but in principle, what they were trying to tell me was there are certain dates of when you make your payment to the bank, not the dates the bank tells you. Right? On certain dates, when you pay the bank, more money goes into your principal compared to your interest. And on certain dates, more money goes into your interest compared to your principal. So you need to study the cycle. On certain months, there are certain dates you pay. On certain months, there are certain dates you pay. And believe it or not, the calculation that was presented in front of me saves me 5 years of payment.
I've seen this. I don't buy into it 100% because simply put, the formula to calculate your interest payments and basically the amortization table, right, is based on a 30-day period. It doesn't, in that 30-day period, it doesn't distinguish between what specific date comes in. So yes, there is a company going about doing this, but whether it's entirely true, this is a question mark. But this is actually a topic for another video. Because I've got some things, I disagree with paying off your mortgage very quickly. I have my reasons, and I want to thrash it out with him.
Yes, we shall trash it out as we do every single week on Jalan-Jalan Cari Rumah.
You should bring your boxing gloves, man.
I'll bring 2 pairs, man. We'll box it out.
Yes, you should box it out.
Okay, so what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on negative cash flow? Drop it down at the bottom of the screen. Give us your comments. Let us know what you think. Have we said something wrong? Do you have anything to add to it? Please, we welcome everything. So please share your thoughts with us.
Before we say goodbye, I'd just like to add one more thing about negative cash flow. So I said that there are people who are making positive cash flow on their investment properties. It's a good thing as well. But I found through personal experience, and I've been looking at some data, and it seems to indicate this as well, there is a spectrum between positive cash flow and capital appreciation. So the more you go towards positive cash flow, the lower the capital appreciation on the property usually. Okay? Again, there are outliers, so it doesn't apply to every single investment property, but just in general, the more you go towards positive cash flow, the lower your capital appreciation. Example, student accommodation. So you can make really good cash flow from student accommodation, but these properties generally don't increase in capital appreciation as fast. Then as you move towards the other end of the spectrum where capital appreciation is high, you'll find that cash flow is low. So the trick is actually to find a balance between the two, but then other people have preferences for positive cash flow, so you can also go for positive cash flow, but I'd rather stay somewhere where I can maximize both. Meaning, because the real money in property investment is actually from capital appreciation. So that's just another thing that I wanted to add. We should be stopping right now. If you have any comments, if you disagree with me, please put them down in the comment section below. And as Guna said, give us your voice. Tell us what you think. If if we've said something wrong, correct us.
So till next week, I'm Gunaprasath.
I'm Ikhram.